Welcome to Whole Human Capacity, mind, body, emotions, spirit, all in alignment. This show is for high achievers who are done living in hustle, done running on stress, and ready for ambition without giving up what your heart truly desires. Here we'll talk about what it means to live as a whole human, how your nervous system, your inner knowing, and your daily choices all work together, and how to build a life that actually feels like yours, not one that just looks good on paper. Hi, I'm Erica Resch, retired physician, mama 3, and a life coach who has built my life around what I refuse to regret. Hey there, welcome. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, I want to talk about something that strikes a very passionate note in my body, and it is the topic of leaving something versus moving towards something. And the reason this is so passionate to me and really, I can even get a little emotional about it for sure, and probably will during this episode, because in 2018, as I have shared, I'm even in the process of rewriting my own story about this. So this is just the real human experience of navigating life that I'm sharing with you. So in 2018, I moved toward a life that I have now. And I would have said, up until I really thought about this and it came through in the past week or two, I would have said I left medicine. I left my position as a clinical family physician in an outpatient office setting with amazing patients and great colleagues, and I left it. I retired. However, I think there's a different way to tell this story, and I want to share this from a couple vantage points. One is from the vantage point of if you are like me, and if you are in the age group that I'm at, there's likely that you are like me in the sense that you have moved through something. You have left something. You have transitioned from one thing to another, right? Even if we just take the basic tenet of our children, like my children are no longer toddlers. I could say they have left the toddler stage, but really they've moved towards these amazing humans that are developing into people that I'm just floored with every single day of how awesome they are. And just the richness to them and their love of life and what they want to do, right? Can you feel the difference in my energy? And I say this with a caveat because I also think that as the human, we need to be real and honest with ourselves that transitions also are hard. And there is grief and there is a lot of emotions. And we'll get into that today about maybe a way to look at it or a way to navigate it that if I knew in 2018 was available, which I'm sure it is and it always has been to some degree, I just didn't know about it. I didn't have the tools that I have now then. And I know that this information, this podcast, this sharing of my experience is coming through me to offer this to somebody out there who is maybe at the place where I was in 2018 or is at a different place, but is at a place where there's a deep knowing that one chapter is closing and the final words are being written and another one is opening. And so I really want to talk about this from the sense of completion. And completion for some of us is not an easy thing. And it's not an easy thing because many times we don't understand what's happening, right? And let me just go back to 2018. I was in practice. I had 3 younger children at the time. I also had some health problems of my own. And for probably a good year-ish, if not more, I was getting like these visions of like where I knew my life could be and what it could look like. And I dismissed them. I put them off. I'm like, that's not possible. This is not going to happen. Keep going. This is not going to pay the bills. You have patients to see. You have children, blah, blah, blah. All the things we tell ourselves. And I didn't recognize what was really happening. What was really happening is that chapter of my life was coming to a close. This is how I see things, and this is what my experience has taught me. So take this as you will, take what's for you and leave the rest. But I think naturally as humans, we don't always recognize that the chapter is closing and that something is coming to completion. I don't necessarily think we were taught to see life that way. We don't see that modeled very much in our outside world. I don't think, especially my generation, did really saw that growing up. That's like, oh, this is, let's celebrate. This chapter is complete. Many times for a lot of us growing up, especially professionally, many people that are of our parents' age stayed in the same position of their job, like same company for 30, 40 years, which is wonderful and amazing. But the idea of something coming to completion and allowing for the next chapter to open was not always openly shown to me, at least, right? And so I don't know if we always have the nervous system awareness of that's what's happening, but I think it's what's happening because the more people I talk to, the more people I coach, the more people I just observe naturally walk from one aspect of their life that they're now saying, I kind of want to go here. That happens for all of us. What I'd like to offer today is that I think there's a way to navigate this where we can walk this process and get to the other side of it with energy, with connectedness, even greater connectedness to ourselves, to the people around us, even maybe to the people that we're quote unquote leaving behind, as we might say it, right? Where we move through it and we feel energetically fulfilled during the process. Then there's the other way of navigating it, which was me in 2018, and which I think is kind of our primal instinctual way of navigating something when it's coming to a close because inherently it doesn't feel safe. Because what happens is when something's coming to a close and one chapter is coming to a close and we aren't necessarily fully aware of what's being written in the next chapter, we're walking into the unknown. And when we walk into the unknown, one of the natural human instinctual responses of the brain and the nervous system is to contract and to say, this is not familiar. And because it's not familiar, I can't prove that it's safe. And because it's not safe, we shouldn't be here right now. So, what happens is, at least for me, the little nudges that I received, the visions I was getting, I just dismissed and I just dismissed. And my body started telling me, this isn't working anymore. Like, I can share my health journey at another time, but like there were signs. I had autoimmune disease. There were signs from my body that this is no longer where we're to be. This is complete. This is done. Yeah, I didn't listen. I didn't know how to listen. I didn't know how to frame it in a loving way to myself. And so what I think happens and what happens to me is there's almost like this deep constriction point that happens where everything starts boiling to a head. And in another time, we can discuss how sometimes creatively that is very helpful. However, what I'd like to offer today is there's a way of feeling that constriction from an empowered place. And then there's also the way of feeling it from a very disempowered place, which is where I was at, which means you start feeling stuck and trapped. And when a human starts feeling trapped and stuck, and like our back is against the wall, we start relying on very primitive survival skills. And one of those primitive survival skills is to go into all or nothing thinking. Or another way of saying that is to go into where you have an adversarial relationship with everything, where it's me or it, right? Where that's wrong, that person's wrong, that job is wrong, that relationship is wrong, and I'm right. And this is a place that I would like to offer is very, very energetically costly. It's costly because there is only one winner. And if you want to be the winner, you've got to be right, which means you put everything else in the wrong category. And so we tend to fight to win the argument. I know I did. It was like, I don't have time to be with my kids. I have too many charts to fill out. This and this and this about the medical system that's changing with all the new laws that are happening and blah, 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 right? And all those things may be fair, well, and true, right? I'm not saying any of those storylines are necessarily false. But what I'm saying is instead of embracing them and working with them and declaring what I actually wanted versus proving or justifying why I needed to go, right? There's a difference of energy there. Well, I chose to do because I didn't really understand at the time. I chose to make everything wrong and me right and prove why I needed to go. What I'd like to offer that's on the table for all of us is to just say, I want. Like, I really desire to move to this next phase of my life. I desire to have a different relationship with you. If you're in a romantic relationship and that's coming to completion and you know that it's not going to exist the way that it is, but you desire something different, you could say, I desire something different, right? If you want to change locations of where you're living, it's not because one location is a problem or it's bad or there's awful things about it. It's maybe you just desire to move to a different location. Maybe it's the same thing with your job, or maybe you desire to not work, to be at home with your family, right? This is the thing that's interesting to me to really and what's being called for me to really speak about, which is there is this place where we don't feel safe or we haven't given ourselves permission to truly just say what we desire. So instead, what feels safer is to justify why we need to go. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're like me in 2018, where you have worked really hard, still have a lot of debt, a lot of people supported you to get to where you're going, you have people depending on you. When you say, when you think about saying what you really want, you know that there might be some like responses back to you. And so the easier way, right? The non-confrontational way or the not having to just say, it's done. Like, this has been an amazing ride. And now it's time for something new. We tend to really just protect, right? And we tend to close off our hearts, close off our connectedness to ourselves and to other people, and more importantly, to God, in my opinion. And we go into tunnel vision. We go into true fight or flight mode. And so I really want to offer that I have so much compassion for this because for me, I knew I was being called to something different. But truthfully, and it brings tears to my eyes, at that time in my life, the only way I knew how to do that, to muster the energy emotionally, energetically, spiritually, physically to do it, was to rely on this more primitive way of navigating life. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just want to offer that. There's nothing wrong with that. However, what I want to offer and that I feel part of my mission is to walk things, study them intently. If you know me, I totally am fascinated by all these things and mine them, deeply go into it and pull out the nuggets, pull out the pieces, pull out the ways that for the next person, right? It's like almost like if you're walking on a trail and you can sit there and let all the branches hit you in the face, or you could, kind of move them over so the next person behind you doesn't get hit with those branches and gets to move faster along the trail with more ease and gets to take in the trail and gets to look at all the beautiful scenery versus focusing in on what's going to hit them on the face in the face on the trail, right? Do you see what I'm trying to say? So I know that's part of my mission. And that's why I feel very passionately about talking about this today. And I know it won't be the last time. But this is the opening discussion of really, really saying there is another option on the table if you choose. And again, no judgment if you don't. But sometimes I don't even know there's another option. I didn't. And so I want to give you the other option. The other option is that from a very open heart, deeply connected to yourself, with reverence from all the chapters you've walked in your life, and this current chapter that the final words are being written, you say, there's going to be a new chapter. I desire to move into something else, to pursue something else, to see what else I'm capable of, to try something new, right? To be in a more connected place with who I am and who I'm becoming, right? That option's on the table. And what I want to present to you today is ways to strengthen yourself, to be able to have the capacity to offer yourself that option, to even entertain that option, right? Because this is, in my opinion, living into your whole human capacity, where you have strengthened and fortified yourself so much so that you have the capability, the capacity, the ability to speak from your heart to yourself, to the world, to everyone, whatever it might be, what you truly desire. I know I am working on developing a deeper and richer capacity to do that. So, what I want to talk about next is what are the costs? Right? Let's go into really, cuz sometimes I think we as humans need to see the why. Like, we need to see Why? What happens when we choose A over B, right? So let's talk about the costs. And these are a couple of the things that have come through me that I have noticed over the past 7 to 8 years of navigating this journey after 2018, of really understanding I want to say the cost, but the other experiences that were provided, I should say, through primitive survival skills, right? So, one of these is I burnt bridges. And I wouldn't say they're permanently burnt, but I would say that I could have strengthened bridges during this process versus weakening them. And what do I mean by that? In the process of navigating, right, from pure survival, of being totally stuck feeling in my body, of I've got to get the hell out of here. I, in my mind, maybe not verbally outwardly, but within my being, really made my other people in my life wrong. Meaning the administrators that I was working with, or, just the idea of like, they one colleague does it this way, well, I can't do it that way. And I can't stay here because I can't do it that way. And they're more efficient than me, right? All these different ways that I made and blamed others or the situation or the industry, right? Or the profession, all of it for how I was feeling. And I do think that's a process that we walk through as we're navigating. So I want to give some grace that we might drop into that a little bit, even if you choose option B, right? That's kind of the human nature, right? Let's give ourselves some grace. But what I want to offer to you is it's very energetically costly because what you're telling yourself is the grass is greener on the other side, right? You're making this grass awful and miserable and bad and wrong so that you can tell yourself that the grass over here where we're going to go is going to be amazing. However, that grass still, in my case, had 3 kids, had laundry that needed to be done, had groceries and household stuff that needed to be done, had life experiences. At that time in 2018, my grandmother was in her final days of life, so I was navigating that. Like, just there's life, right? Life happens whether you're on plot of grass A or plot of grass B. It's going to happen. The difference is how you see it and how you navigate it. And I know for sure I was telling myself that when I don't have to do all of these charts and when I don't have to show up at a certain time and when I don't have to X, Y, and Z, life would be different and that would be great. Until one day, about 6 to 8 weeks into this, my husband looks at me and says, Erica, there's absolutely nothing different. You're still in the same energy as you were working. Like, we're still having the same conversations. We're still in the same place with the kid. Like, things aren't changing. And it was a real wake up call to me of like, whoa, like it's not necessarily changing the situation that's going to fix everything. Now, did it allow me more time to investigate myself when I realized what I needed to do next? It opened the door for me to find coaching, right? And that did, things did shift in a different way. But it wasn't necessarily because I made the change. It wasn't because one was wrong and one was right, or one was good and one was bad. That wasn't the case. So I offer this to you because you do have a different option on the table. You have the option of nurturing relationships while you are transitioning, while those final words of the chapter are being written and you're moving into something else. That's an option on the table. And when you move that way, which I have now had the experiences of doing, right? You come to the new grass at a much different place. So, really letting yourself honor the cost of going into primal survival thinking, I feel is helpful because the next thing it does is it blocks us from actually feeling the process unfolding. And of course, right? When we're walking through this kind of a process, let's be honest, we're going to feel a lot. If you are fully present, you are going to feel the full range of emotions wash through your body, from all the way to pure exhilaration and fascination and curiosity of where you're going to complete despair and grief and sadness and joy and everything in between. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's the full gamut, which was why, as a sidebar, if you really want to feel alive and you really want to develop your capacity to do this, Choosing to move through something in this capacity is a training program like nothing else, if you choose for it to be. And it will connect you back to your body, back to your spirit, back to God in a way that you cannot even fathom if you choose that. And that option is on the table. However, if you are not aware and you are not paying attention to this and you are just moving through on default mode, basically, right? You're going to bottle all that energy up and it's going to be stored in your body somewhere. And then what's going to happen, which happened to me for sure, is you're going to move into the next time you want to move to something else. And all of this is going to come back. And your body's going to signal we're not safe because we weren't safe this last time. So why are we safe now? And so your fight or flight kicks in, which now you need to navigate fight or flight on top of all of the emotions that are moving through you, on top of the decisions to make, right? And so you now are really spending a lot of energy rewiring, shifting, focusing on the actual just trying to navigate versus where you really want to go. And so I want to offer this is not a problem if we've done this because we all have done this. We didn't know this information, we didn't know how to do this. And it also serves a purpose if this is how we've walked. It gives us the ability to go back, it gives us the ability to recognize what has happened, why our body might be reacting the way that it is, why we're having maybe some resistance to moving forward. We can have compassion for ourselves now that we understand what happened in other times of transition during our lives. However, this is a piece that we now know and we now have choice of how we truly want to move. Do we want to leave something or do we want to move toward something? The last piece I'll offer that feels very energetically costly is you also, just like your body is not fully moving and processing as you're going through the process, you're actually doing that on the back end. Your identity is not shifting either. Your self concept, how you see yourself, how the world sees you, how you present yourself to others in the world, isn't shifting with you. And it really is something that after you, like, let's say you actually are like me and you do transition out of a career choice and you move into something else, there's a lot of catch up work to do for your identity because literally you just superficially made choices, but you did not actually become the woman, the person who is now on the other side. When we choose to be fully present during this process, we are becoming as we're walking, which is extremely energetically efficient to us, which is very loving, very kind. But it does require us to be present and to feel and to be in a space where we have our own back and where we're nurturing ourselves. So, all this to say is that what I learned from my way of navigating in 2018 is I came out on the other end of that in a very deep energetic hole of my spiritual life, my emotional life, my physical life, my mental life, all of it, all of the capacities of me were in a hole. And I know that was where I was to go so that I could learn all of these things to share with you. So I'm not saying it doesn't serve a purpose by any stretch of the imagination. However, I now know that I have a choice of how to do this. And now that I know I have a choice of how to do it, I tend to try to choose the one that doesn't put me in the hole because that requires now, right, for me to take time, to be honest with you, and energy to get back to baseline before I try to move forward. I'd actually tried to move from the hole, which is actually not energetically helpful at all whatsoever. So then I realized, oh, wait a minute, I got to get myself out of this hole. I need to take care of myself. I need to learn how to take care of myself. I need to recuperate from this navigation of the past 2 or 3 years of what happened and how I did that. And the amount of, I would use the word as some people say, little t trauma, right? But it was trauma. I felt stuck. And the way I navigated it was from a traumatic response or a response triggered, right? But by my nervous system due to quote unquote trauma. So we have the option to move into the next stage of our, if you want to say the race, right? You could take that analogy too, right? Just like if you're in a triathlon and you come out of the swimming portion and you're just going to jump on the bike, right? You have options of how you navigated that swimming portion to either really push hard and try to beat everybody out of the water where you know you're going to be in an energetic deficit by the time you hit the bike and you got to make that up. Or you could, take your time and swim at a steady pace and maintain your energy knowing that maybe you'll push later, right? There's all these options on the table. But there is a piece here that I would say that a few things are required of us, right? There's a few capacities we've got to build, we've got to strengthen, we have to be willing to develop if we choose to navigate this from the lens of moving towards something. One of these things is vulnerability. And I think this is one of the toughest things to develop the capacity to hold. The holding the energetic capacity, the energetic ball of energy in your hands, in your being, of being exposed, being raw, being seen for what you truly desire rather than what you think everybody else wants you to do or think you should do. That is a humbling capacity to develop, but it is so rich and so robust and so extremely empowering to you that is worth it. Because what it does is it allows you to be able to hold both the chapter not being fully finished and the next one opening and everything else going on around you because you've declared what you desire. And as we've developed the capacity to be vulnerable, we've learned if this is something you choose to pursue, you learn how to take care of yourself, how to nurture yourself, how to find safety from within, right? So that the safety that we thought was going to be provided by whatever this chapter held for us isn't going to be there anymore and is falling away as we speak. And if you're in the middle of it, so developing that safety from within is how we navigate that in full vulnerability. And I really believe, at least for me, declaring what I desire, declaring what, and I use the word declare because it is a declaring, it's a declaration. It is a statement of what, right? Of what you truly want. And I believe that when we are in these places where a cycle is completing and the next one's opening, it's declaring what's coming through us that God is asking us to do, that is guiding us to do, that He's saying, this is the next amazing thing waiting for you. That's some very expansive energy. That is big. And a lot of us, maybe, like if you're like myself, have a little bit of wounding around being intense or being too much or being dreaming too big or expecting too much or being like, that's not possible. Why do you think people could be able to do that? Right? We all have our own flavor of this. So when you get the knowing of what you truly want, which I believe is what God's asking you to do, it's a 1-to-1 correlation. That's like, I don't know, running across the stage naked or something. Like that is extremely exposing and vulnerable, especially if part of your journey so far has been comprised of some people pleasing and some perfectionism, which is where you have lived to govern the reactions of other people by what you chose to do, right? Where you are not thinking about what do I want and what do I desire and what's the best for me and what is God asking me to do. We're thinking about, well, what will they think about this? And what should I do to make them happy? Even if it's not conscious, many times it's subconscious, right? I would also like to offer and have a lot of compassion that if you are in an industry and a profession where your compensation, your salary, your monetary flow is partially, if not all, governed by customer satisfaction, by patient reviews, by, like likes on Instagram or whatever it might be, right? We can really be in these patterns and not even realize it. So I really have a lot of compassion for that, but I also want to bring a lot of awareness to it. Because if we're not aware of that, we will be in the leaving energy versus moving toward energy. The moving toward energy truly is one of declaration and having your own back and enjoying the journey of doing it. Because the other piece that is required is feeling all of it. It is kind of the price of admission, people. Like I'm just being honest. And I say that because if you were where I was at in 2018, you're going to think that's a heavy price to pay, potentially, because maybe like me, your body might be very numb and you may have dismantled the ability to truly feel. But as we turn that back on, and as we become more in tune with our body, and as we start to feel things and be like, I didn't die, I'm okay. Like life goes on. And We do that more and we do that more and we build the confidence within us and the capacity to do that. That is when life truly opens up and you feel truly alive. So, yes, these are the things that are required. However, the things that are required is what makes this whole thing amazing and not let's say a cost or not a negative, right? It brings us into the place of like, wow, this is an awesome part of the journey. It's hard. I feel grief. I feel sadness. And I feel true, like, exhilaration and excited and in awe of what's unfolding in front of me. I can feel it both. Both can hold true at the same time. That is a capacity where if we can do that, the world is our oyster, as people say. So the next thing is building upon what we just talked about, which is allowing other people to have their own thoughts and their own feelings. Which, let's be honest, if we cannot allow ourselves to feel everything and know that we're safe, how is it really possible for us to also, therefore, for many of us, feel what's the energy of the people around us as they're hearing what we're saying, as we're navigating this process? Because things are shifting for them too. Many times, our decisions to move towards something is not just about us, there are other people around us being impacted by that. And so, developing the capacity to know that, of course, every human is going to have thoughts and feelings about everything. And they happen to have thoughts and feelings about my declaration of where I'm choosing to go and what I know is coming next. And I can allow them to be in their process, just like I'm allowing myself to be in my process. But it does start with a key pivotal piece, which is allowing ourselves to be in our process, allowing ourselves to feel, allowing ourselves to navigate it, allowing ourselves to be in grief 1 minute and in excitement the next, and knowing that that is, I believe, a natural part of the process for all of us humans. The last thing that I think is required is the ability to ask for help. One of the things that, if I wish I could go back and tell myself in 2018 and speak to me then with the knowledge I have now and the wisdom and the lived experience, I would say, you don't have to do this alone. I didn't know that at that time. It was my only way of operating, probably for a lot of reasons, right? I'm the oldest child. I Part of my perception of the profession I was in is you don't make mistakes, right? You can't make mistakes. You can't admit that you need help. Don't show them that you're weak. One of the things that was very popular, and I'm not in it now, but I'm guessing it still is the idea of physician burnout. So it's like, oh, you're a burnout physician. You can't hack it. That was a story that I just heard in the back of my head. And so for me, which I really think is for a lot of us, one of our strategies to navigate that piece is to isolate, is to go within, is to not even recognize that help could be an option on the table, that another human could make life a little easier if you choose, right? I really believe that that is one of the linchpins in the shifting of moving from the energy of leaving something to moving toward. The moving toward energy does require of us to ask for help. And here's why. When we are in such locked down fight or flight, tunnel vision, we cannot see what we cannot see. We do not really know. At least I don't. And this is what I experienced. So I'm just using my experience. I didn't even know I was doing this. I didn't even understand it. It was just the only thing I knew to do. And looking back, if I had someone that I met with and who listened to what I have to say, mirrored back to me, do you see here's where this thought is causing a lot of pain for you? Can you see where this is coming from fear and not from trusting yourself? Right? Really showing me, mirroring back to me what the patterns were that I was walking so that I did then would then have a choice to make. And I could see the difference between what is the feeling state in my body of the energy of leaving something and leaving something behind versus moving toward. There would be a distinction. But I really believe that and it serves a beautiful purpose, this idea of fight or flight, right? this primal, primitive, instinctual part of us to protect. I think that it's beautifully necessary if we're truly in danger. But here's the piece that I've come to know about it that I think is absolutely fascinating and beautiful, which is when we are willing to go into the spaces where we are in fight or flight, where we are seeing those blocks, which means where we're willing to ask for help and explore this in a deep way with someone. And we get that knowledge of, oh, this is where that is, and this is here, and can you see that there? Those are beautiful windows, even doors. I would even say portals of massive opportunity to connect deeper to who we truly are, who we're becoming, where God is asking us to go to a richer, more robust life. But we got to be willing to go in and we got to be willing to walk into the fear. And when we are in lockdown, fight or flight mode, sometimes you're not so willing to do that. Sometimes you don't even see that as an option. Like it's not even entertained. Like it does not even comprehend within your mind sometimes. And it is way more fun. It is way more energetically efficient with the right humans around you to move through this when you ask for help, because you then get to the place where you are starting to understand how to generate safety from within you rather than relying on the external things around you to provide safety, which inherently are all falling away, right? They're all falling away because the chapter's ending and the next one's opening. So it all starts in seeing where we're at and in asking for the help to be able to see where we're at. To me, developing the capacity to be our true, full, whole human self is one that requires all of these things: vulnerability, the ability to feel, the ability to allow others to feel, and the ability to allow others in on our journey to help us, to walk beside us, to be teammates with us. And it brings tears to my eyes. I don't know where I would be if I did not really find coaching or if coaching didn't find me, however that happened. The coaches I've worked with in my life, I am so grateful for their gift, for their patience. Sometimes I can be a hard nut to crack, and for their willingness to go into, I would say, a profession that requires of us as coaches to be in integrity and walk the walk. And when you're surrounded by other people who are doing that, suddenly moving towards something doesn't become so tough, or it doesn't become so scary. It becomes what you want and you desire. And it's like, let's go. This is going to be amazing. And all the things with it, but it's going to be amazing. So, in closing and in wrapping all of this up, it all starts with the story we're telling. It all starts with the story and how we're telling our story. Are we telling our story from the place that we're leaving something or someone behind? Or are we telling the story from the place of we're moving toward what we truly desire and we're being guided to do? We always get to choose. And it's all about how we're going to nourish and nurture ourselves along the way. So, if you are in this place, if you have been in this place, if you are going towards this place where you know a chapter is ending and the next one is wanting to be written, I honor you. I see you. And you're doing a really, really good job. Keep going. Keep going. Even when you don't know where you're going and you don't think you're ever going to find where you're going. And it feels insurmountable, but you know it's where you need to go. You know what it's going to bring on the other side is unfathomable. Keep going. You got this. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you are ready to build your whole human capacity, email me at erica@theawakeningtide.com to schedule a free consult with me where we can explore where you are desiring to expand and how I can help you in that process. And if this show supported you today, if there was something that resonated that spoke to you, please follow along, or more importantly, please pass this along to somebody who you know is waiting to hear this message.